Can I be real with y'all for a minute? See, we live in a world that will have you thinking you're incomplete if you don't have somebody holding your hand. They'll tell you your value is proven by who texts you goodnight, who puts a ring on your finger, or whose last name you take. But what if I told you that singleness is not a curse? It's a classroom. What if I told you that this season you're in right now, standing strong all by yourself, might be the most powerful season of your entire life? Because staying single doesn't mean you're waiting. It means you're building. It means you're discovering. It means you're aligning with the version of you that God created. When we talk about singleness, most people immediately connect it with loneliness. They imagine an empty table for two, Friday nights spent scrolling on social media, or awkward questions at family gatherings about when you're finally going to settle down. Culture has conditioned us to see singleness as a waiting room where we sit with a number in our hand, praying that one day our turn will finally be called. But the truth is, singleness is not loneliness. It's preparation. It's the training ground where you are shaped, stretched, healed, and equipped for the future that's bigger than just a relationship. When you are single, you have the rare and sacred opportunity to learn who you truly are without the noise of someone else's expectations. You get to wake up and decide for yourself what matters most to you, what kind of life you want to build, and how you want to show up in the world. This is the time where you can dig into your purpose, not because you're waiting for someone to join you, but because you are discovering the fullness of the assignment that was placed on your life long before anyone else was ever in the picture. Being single doesn't leave you lacking. It leaves you room to grow. Preparation is not glamorous. It often looks like sacrifice, discipline, and facing hard truths about yourself. When you're single, you have no one else to blame for your bad habits or your insecurities. It's just you, the mirror, and God. That can feel uncomfortable, but it's also where transformation happens. Think about a seed that gets planted in the dirt. It's buried in darkness, hidden from the world. And it looks like nothing is happening, but under the surface, roots are forming, strength is being built, and eventually that seed pushes through the soil into the light. Singleness is that soil season. It's the place where God can develop your roots deep enough to sustain the weight of the fruit you'll bear later. Too often, people rush through singleness because they believe their value will be proven when they are chosen by someone else. But rushing through preparation always leads to problems down the road. Imagine walking into a gym, grabbing the heaviest weight on the rack without ever training your muscles, and then wondering why you're straining and injured. That's what happens when people jump into relationships without allowing their single season to strengthen them. They carry baggage, insecurities, unhealed wounds, and then expect another person to fix what only preparation could have healed. In your single season, you get to build disciplines that will sustain you for the rest of your life. You get to practice managing your time, your money, your emotions, your spiritual walk. If you don't know how to steward your own paycheck, how will you handle the responsibilities of sharing finances with another person? If you don't know how to regulate your own emotions, how will you handle conflict when it comes? Singleness is not punishment. It's practice. It's where you learn the skills that make you strong enough to handle the blessings that will eventually come your way. One of the greatest gifts of this season is clarity. When you're not entangled in trying to meet someone else's needs or constantly adjusting to fit into someone else's life, you can actually hear your own voice. You can listen to the whispers of your soul, the guidance of God, and the desires that are authentically yours. Clarity comes when you stop trying to perform and start allowing yourself to just be. Many people lose themselves in relationships because they never learned who they were to begin with. Preparation in singleness gives you the foundation of identity so that when love does show up, you can welcome it without losing yourself in the process. Singleness also teaches you resilience. You learn how to stand on your own 2 feet. You learn that your joy doesn't have to be tied to another person's approval or attention. You discover that you can go to the movies alone, take yourself out to dinner, travel solo, and not only survive, but actually thrive. This independence doesn't harden you, it strengthens you. It shows you that you are enough all by yourself, and that knowledge becomes the anchor that holds you steady when storms come. Preparation in singleness is not just about personal growth, it's also about spiritual intimacy. This is the time where you can deepen your relationship with God without distraction. You can pour your heart out, build a prayer life, study scripture, and truly learn how to hear his voice. Because here's the truth: if you can't hear God when you're single, it will be even harder to hear him when you're in the noise of a relationship. Your single season is your training ground to tune your ear to heaven, to align your decisions with divine wisdom, and to trust that God's timing is always better than your own. Singleness is preparation for the weight of destiny. Every great calling requires a season of being set apart. Joseph was alone in the pit before he was elevated in the palace. David was alone in the fields tending sheep before he ever stepped into the throne room. Even Jesus spent time in the wilderness before he began his ministry. Those seasons of isolation were not punishment. They were preparation. They were necessary to develop the character, the faith, and the endurance needed for the assignment ahead. In the same way, your single season is not wasted time. It's divine training. The world will try to convince you that being single is an absence of something, but in reality, it is the presence of something powerful, the presence of space, the presence of growth, the presence of opportunity. You're not waiting for your life to begin. It's already happening. Every day you wake up single is another day to build, to learn to heal, to grow stronger, to discover more about who you are and who you're becoming. This is the preparation that ensures when love does come, you'll be ready not just to receive it, but to sustain it. Would you like me to continue expanding this keynote into story-driven illustrations and biblical parallels to hit the 1,000-word mark? Or keep it more straight motivational flow like this? Before he even thought about pairing you with anybody else, your identity is complete before connection. That means who you are at your core, your worth, your value, your uniqueness. None of it begins the moment someone decides to love you. Too often, we've been taught to view relationships as the finishing touch to our identity, like we are puzzle pieces waiting for another person to complete the picture. But the truth is, you came into this world whole. You were formed with intention, with gifts, with purpose, with identity already written into your DNA. Connection with another person can complement you, but it cannot complete you. If you don't know who you are before you connect, you will lose yourself trying to become what someone else wants you to be. Identity is the foundation of every choice you make. When you know who you are, you know what you will and won't accept. You know where you will and won't go. You know which opportunities align with your destiny and which ones are distractions. But when identity is shaky, everything else becomes shaky. People without a strong sense of self are easily swayed by the opinions of others, tossed back and forth by every compliment or criticism, constantly morphing into whoever they think will be loved and accepted. Connection without identity becomes dependency, and dependency without self-awareness becomes a trap. Being single gives you the rare opportunity to establish your identity apart from the influence of a partner. It allows you to ask, who am I when no one else is watching? Who am I when I don't have to perform? Who am I when I'm not trying to impress? Those answers matter because they reveal the authentic self, not the edited version designed to be chosen. Too many people only discover who they are after heartbreak, after years of compromise, after realizing they've lost themselves in the shadow of another person. Singleness spares you from that because it calls you to root yourself in identity now, before connection even enters the picture. The world loves to romanticize the phrase, "you complete me." It sounds sweet. It sounds poetic, but it's one of the most dangerous lies we can embrace. If someone else completes you, that means without them you are half. That means without them you are lacking. That means your existence is only validated by their presence. That is not love, that is dependency disguised as romance. Real love comes when two complete individuals choose to walk together, not when two broken halves cling to each other in desperation. Your identity has to be anchored in something deeper than another person's approval, because approval can change. People can leave. Opinions can shift. But if your worth is rooted in who God says you are, then it is unshakable, immovable, and constant. Identity is not just about knowing your name or your career or your talents. It's about knowing your values, your calling, your boundaries, your voice. It's about being so clear on who you are that when someone comes along, you don't shrink yourself to fit into their vision. You invite them to rise and walk with you in yours. A strong identity doesn't intimidate the right person, it attracts them, because confidence, clarity, and authenticity are magnetic. But if you walk into connection without knowing yourself, you will try to borrow someone else's identity, and borrowed identities never fit. They always leave you uncomfortable, restless, and eventually resentful. When you know your identity before connection, you approach relationships differently. You don't come to the table asking, will this person give me worth? You come to the table already worthy, already whole, already clear, and you ask, does this relationship align with the person I already am? That question changes everything. It shifts the power dynamic because you are no longer desperate to be chosen. You are discerning about who you choose. Identity gives you discernment because it filters out what doesn't match your values. It protects you from settling because you realize that no companionship is worth the cost of losing yourself. So many people chase relationships because they are running from the silence of being alone with themselves. They think a partner will fix the emptiness they feel inside. But connection cannot heal what identity has not addressed. If you feel incomplete, if you feel insecure, if you feel unworthy, a relationship will only magnify those feelings because now you are relying on another flawed human being to fill a void that only identity and God can fill. That's why it's so important to build that completeness now in your single season so that when you connect with someone, you are not bringing emptiness but overflow. Think about a glass. If it is half empty, you will constantly be looking for someone to pour into you, and when they don't, you will feel neglected. But if your glass is already full, if you already know your worth, then any love they give is overflow, not necessity. Identity allows you to show up in connection as a giver, not just a taker. It allows you to love freely without fear because you are not afraid of losing yourself. You know who you are, whether they stay or whether they go. Identity is also what anchors you in seasons of transition. Relationships go through highs and lows, through changes, through challenges. Without identity, you will shift with every storm, questioning your value every time something goes wrong. But with identity, you remain steady. You know that a disagreement doesn't mean you are unworthy. You know that a breakup doesn't mean you are broken. You know that rejection doesn't mean you are less than. Your identity is rooted deeper than circumstances. The preparation of singleness is the preparation of identity. This is the season to discover what makes you come alive, to explore your passions, to chase dreams, to set boundaries, to heal wounds, to affirm your worth daily until it becomes unshakable truth in your spirit. Because when you walk into a connection already complete, you remove the pressure from the other person to be your savior. They don't have to be your joy, your peace, your validation, because you already carry those within yourself. That freedom allows love to flourish in a healthy way because it is not built on dependency, but on choice. Every time you affirm your identity in this season, you are strengthening the foundation of your future. You are declaring that you don't need connection to validate what God already declared about you. You are refusing to live as half when you were created as whole. You are walking with the confidence that your identity is complete before connection. And that completeness is what prepares you for every blessing, every relationship, every opportunity that is aligned with your destiny. Purpose thrives in solitude before partnership. When you are single, you are given a sacred season where your time, your energy, your focus, and your heart are undivided. You don't have to split your attention between building yourself and managing the needs of someone else. You don't have to dilute your dreams to fit into another person's schedule. Solitude becomes fertile ground for purpose because it eliminates the distractions that often come with connection. It allows you to hear your inner voice clearly, to hear God's voice clearly, and to align your actions with the reason you were placed on this earth. Purpose isn't something you stumble upon by accident. It's something you discover through intentional reflection, trial and error, and obedience. In solitude, you have the room to explore without pressure. You can pursue that vision, try that business idea, write that book, start that ministry without having to explain yourself or justify your late nights and early mornings to a partner who may not yet understand the weight of what you are carrying. That freedom to move without compromise is what makes your single season so powerful. It's not just empty time waiting for love. It's a divinely appointed opportunity to build something that will outlast you. When you are alone, you begin to recognize the unique imprint you carry. Every person is created with gifts, with talents, with passions that point them toward their purpose. But often those gifts get buried under the noise of relationships where people start molding themselves into who they think they need to be to keep someone's love. In solitude, those masks are stripped away. You are not performing, you are not pretending, you are not trying to shrink or expand to fit into someone else's mold. You are simply being, and in that being, your purpose has space to breathe. History is filled with examples of great leaders, thinkers, and creators who spent seasons in solitude before stepping into their calling. They had to go into the wilderness before stepping onto the stage. They had to spend nights in silence before stepping into influence. That solitude wasn't a punishment, it was preparation. Purpose needs solitude the way seeds need soil. It's in the quiet that visions are birthed, ideas are refined, and faith is strengthened. Without solitude, purpose is often drowned out by the constant demands of others. In relationships, even healthy ones, compromise is inevitable. You have to take someone else's needs, desires, and timeline into account. But in your single season, you can say yes without hesitation. You can invest your money, your energy, and your time into whatever aligns with your purpose without negotiation. That kind of freedom is rare, and it's why this season matters so much. If you waste it chasing connection, you may miss the chance to lay the foundation of purpose that your future partnership could one day benefit from. Purpose thrives in solitude because solitude teaches discipline. Without accountability to another person, it's up to you to wake up early, to study, to create, to practice, to chase the vision you've been given. That discipline becomes the muscle that carries you when the excitement wears off. Purpose is not built in flashes of inspiration alone. It is built in consistent steps of obedience. And solitude gives you the space to cultivate that consistency. It forces you to rely on your own commitment rather than external motivation. And that is what transforms potential into reality. Another reason purpose thrives in solitude is because it allows healing. You cannot fully step into purpose while dragging unhealed wounds behind you. Solitude gives you the time to confront your past, to sit with your pain, to forgive, to let go, to rebuild. If you avoid that work and run into partnership too quickly, those unhealed places will bleed into the relationship and cloud your ability to focus on your calling. Healing in solitude clears the soil so that purpose can grow unchoked by weeds. In solitude, you also learn how to deal with resistance. Every purpose-driven journey will encounter obstacles, critics, and moments of doubt. If you've only ever relied on someone else to validate you, you won't last when the journey gets tough. Solitude trains you to stand firm, to encourage yourself, to believe in what you've been called to do even when no one else understands. That resilience becomes the shield that protects your purpose in seasons where support feels scarce. There's also something deeply spiritual about solitude. It's often in the quiet that you encounter God most clearly. When the noise of relationships is silenced, when the pressure to perform is lifted, you are left face to face with your Creator. That intimacy builds vision. God begins to reveal strategies, open doors, and align connections that you wouldn't have seen if you were too distracted by trying to hold onto a relationship. Solitude positions you to hear divine direction, and divine direction is the fuel that makes purpose unstoppable. Purpose and partnership are not enemies. The right partnership should enhance your purpose, not compete with it. But if you skip the solitude season and rush into partnership without clarity, you risk attaching yourself to someone whose path is misaligned with your calling. That misalignment creates tension, frustration, and often stagnation. Solitude ensures that when you do step into partnership, you already know where you're going, and you can recognize whether someone else's journey aligns with yours. Many people fear solitude because they equate it with emptiness, but solitude is actually fullness. It is the fullness of time, freedom, an opportunity to build. It is the fullness of connection with yourself and with God. It is the fullness of clarity that only comes when the noise is turned down. In that fullness, purpose doesn't just survive. It thrives, it grows strong roots, it develops resilience, it gains momentum that no relationship, no distraction, no season can take away. When you embrace solitude, you stop seeing it as lack and start seeing it as leverage. It's leverage to create the life you were called to live. It's leverage to prepare the legacy you will leave behind. It's leverage to grow into the person who won't just be ready for partnership, but will bring value, vision, and clarity into it. Purpose is not waiting for you to be partnered to begin. It is waiting for you to embrace solitude and allow that season to refine you into someone who can carry the weight of the calling on your life. Healing happens when distractions are removed. Most of us underestimate how much of our pain we bury under constant noise, constant movement, and constant relationships. When you're always surrounded by people, always entangled in conversations, always attached to someone else's expectations, you rarely have to face yourself. Distraction becomes a form of medication, numbing what's really going on inside. But the moment singleness enters the picture, the moment solitude surrounds you, distractions fade, and what's left is the raw truth of your soul. That's where healing begins. Not in the hiding, not in the noise, but in the silence when everything you've avoided finally surfaces. Healing is never convenient. It's messy, it's uncomfortable, and it often comes with a level of pain that most of us would rather escape than endure. Relationships often become the escape, giving us something to pour into, someone to focus on so that we don't have to deal with what's broken in us. But that's a dangerous cycle because what is unhealed eventually shows up in the connection. The wound you refuse to acknowledge in solitude becomes the argument you keep repeating in partnership. The insecurity you avoided facing becomes the jealousy that destroys trust. The unforgiveness you refuse to release becomes the bitterness that poisons intimacy. Healing cannot be outsourced to another person. It is your responsibility. And singleness provides the environment where distractions are stripped away so you can finally confront it. When distractions are gone, the mirror becomes unavoidable. You start to see yourself honestly, the patterns, the habits, the triggers, the weaknesses. At first, that reflection can feel overwhelming, almost unbearable. But healing starts with honesty. You cannot heal what you refuse to acknowledge. Solitude forces you to look without filters, without excuses, without someone else to blame. And in that clarity, you find the courage to start the work. It might mean sitting with old wounds from childhood. It might mean unpacking heartbreaks you never processed. It might mean forgiving people who will never apologize. Healing requires stillness because wounds don't close while you're running. They close when you stop long enough to tend to them. Distractions often masquerade as solutions. A rebound relationship feels like comfort, but is really a cover. Business feels like productivity, but can be avoidance. Social media scrolling feels like connection, but deepens the void. When you remove these distractions, the pain you are masking rises to the surface. And while that feels like breaking, it is actually the beginning of mending. Wounds can only heal when they're exposed to the light. Infection grows in darkness, in the places we hide, but when light touches the wound, the process of restoration begins. Singleness is that light. It gives you the time to feel fully, to grieve fully, to acknowledge what hurt you without pretending it didn't. You can cry the tears you suppressed in the name of being strong for someone else. You can process the betrayal you buried because you didn't want to rock the boat. You can finally exhale the pain you've been holding while trying to keep a relationship alive. That release is necessary. Healing is not about denying the pain, but about releasing its power over you. And you cannot release what you never sit with. Healing also requires rebuilding. Once the wound is addressed, the process of strengthening begins. In singleness, you have the chance to rewrite your story without the interference of another person's narrative. You get to decide what self-worth looks like for you, not what someone else tells you it should be. You get to establish boundaries without fear of losing a relationship. You get to practice new ways of thinking, healthier habits, and deeper self-respect. This rebuilding is powerful because it ensures you don't just heal on the surface, but at the root. One of the most significant parts of healing in solitude is forgiveness, both of others and of yourself. When distractions are removed, you may realize how much resentment you've been carrying, old words spoken over you, betrayals that cut deep, abandonment that left scars. These linger until they are released. Forgiveness doesn't mean what happened was right. It means you are no longer chained to it. And in solitude, you can pray through it, journal through it, cry through it until you feel the weight lift. But forgiveness isn't just for others, it's for yourself. Many people carry shame for the choices they made, for the times they stayed too long, for the times they ignored the red flags. Healing demands that you extend grace to yourself, that you recognize you did the best you could with what you knew, and that grace frees you to move forward without the chains of regret, without distractions. You also discover the roots of your pain. You realize that the anger you thought was about your last relationship actually traces back to childhood rejection. You see that the fear of abandonment didn't start with your ex, but with a parent who was absent. You uncover that the insecurity you feel in love is connected to comparisons you made as a teenager. These revelations only come when silence makes space for reflection. Relationships can sometimes mask these root issues because you blame the person in front of you for a wound they didn't cause. Singleness peels back the layers until you see the origin, and once you see the origin, you can uproot it. Healing in solitude also involves learning new ways to nurture yourself. When you're no longer consumed by distractions, you can invest time into practices that restore your mind, body, and spirit. You can build routines that feed you. Exercise, journaling, therapy, prayer, meditation, rest. These become the tools that carry your healing forward. They aren't quick fixes, they are foundations. And because you built them in solitude, they remain strong when you enter partnership. ensuring that you bring wholeness rather than wounds into the connection. There's also a spiritual layer to healing that thrives in the absence of distraction. In the stillness, you can hear God in ways you couldn't when you were surrounded by noise. His voice becomes clearer, his comfort becomes tangible, his wisdom becomes guiding. Often, healing is not just about emotional or psychological repair, but about spiritual restoration, realizing that your worth is unshaken, your future is secure, and your pain can be transformed into purpose. That level of healing requires intimacy with God, and intimacy with God requires space. Singleness provides that space. Many people fear what they'll uncover in solitude because they know it means facing pain they've avoided for years. But pain faced is pain that can finally heal. The tears you cry in private water the soil of your future. The prayers you whisper in loneliness become the strength you will stand on later. The wounds you tend to in silence become the wisdom you will share with others. Healing in solitude is not easy, but it is essential. When distractions are removed, you are finally able to stop running, stop pretending, and stop patching over what needs to be restored from the inside out. Self-love sets the standard for real love. The way you treat yourself, the way you talk to yourself, the way you value yourself. All of it becomes the blueprint for how others will treat you. If you constantly criticize yourself, accept less than what you deserve, or neglect your own needs, you silently communicate to the world that this is the level of love you believe you are worthy of. But when you practice self-love, when you affirm your value, when you honor your boundaries, you raise the standard. You no longer settle for crumbs when you know you deserve the feast. Self-love is not arrogance, it is awareness. It is the acknowledgement that you are fearfully and wonderfully made, that your worth is inherent, and that no relationship defines your value. Self-love begins with the inner conversation. Every day you wake up, your mind starts speaking before anyone else has the chance to. If your self-talk is filled with doubt, criticism, and shame, you start your day already defeated. But when you intentionally speak life over yourself, when you affirm who you are and what you carry, you set the tone for how you walk into every room. The words you say to yourself in the quiet are the foundation of the standards you carry in public. Loving yourself means choosing words that build instead of break, that affirm instead of diminish. But self-love is more than words, it's action. It's the choices you make daily that reflect your recognition of your own worth. Choosing to rest when you're exhausted is self-love. Choosing to walk away from toxic environments is self-love. Choosing to invest in your growth, whether through education, therapy, or personal development, is self-love. It's easy to say, I love myself. But the proof is in the way you show up for yourself when no one else is clapping, when no one else is watching. That's where self-love is tested and proven. Many people enter relationships without ever learning how to love themselves, and as a result, they hand the responsibility of love over to another person. They expect a partner to fill their emptiness, affirm their worth, and constantly reassure their value. But no one can carry that weight for you consistently. That is why so many relationships collapse under the burden of unmet expectations. Self-love sets the foundation so that you enter into connection already full. Instead of demanding love to prove your worth, you share love as an overflow of what you already give yourself. Boundaries are one of the clearest expressions of self-love. When you know your value, you refuse to tolerate mistreatment, disrespect, or manipulation. You understand that saying no is not selfish. It's stewardship. Every time you say no to what diminishes you, you are saying yes to what honors you. Boundaries are not about keeping people out. They are about keeping your peace, your joy, and your identity intact. Without self-love, boundaries feel impossible because fear of rejection makes you compromise. But with self-love, boundaries become natural because you recognize that preserving your well-being is more important than temporary approval. Self-love also shows up in the way you pursue purpose. When you truly love yourself, you refuse to dim your light or downplay your gifts just to make others comfortable. You step fully into the calling on your life because you know you were created with intention. Playing small is a form of self-betrayal. Living boldly is a form of self-love. You honor yourself by honoring your gifts, by maximizing your potential, by chasing the vision that has been placed in your spirit. When you do this, you set the standard that anyone connected to you must support, not suppress your greatness. Healing is a major part of self-love because you cannot fully love yourself while holding on to wounds that convince you you're unworthy. Self-love pushes you to address your trauma, to process your pain, to release shame. It's the voice that says, I deserve to be whole. I deserve to be free. I deserve to live without chains. That kind of love motivates you to do the hard work of healing because you know that freedom is the ultimate act of self-respect. Without healing, self-love is shallow. With healing, self-love is transformative. Another dimension of self-love is how you steward your body and mind. Eating well, moving your body, resting, and taking care of your mental health are not luxuries. They're necessities. You only get one vessel to carry you through this life, and self-love is shown in the way you protect it. Neglecting your health while pouring into others is not love, it's depletion. Loving yourself means recognizing that your body deserves care, your mind deserves peace, and your spirit deserves alignment. When you nurture yourself in these areas, you not only thrive personally, but you model to others that you are not to be mishandled. Self-love also dismantles the fear of being alone. When you enjoy your own company, when you can take yourself out to dinner, travel solo, or sit in silence without feeling incomplete, you demonstrate to yourself and the world that you are whole. This wholeness becomes magnetic because it shows that your presence is not defined by who accompanies you. You can walk into any space confident, not because of who is beside you, but because of the love you already carry within. That confidence sets the standard for connection because anyone who enters your life must add to the joy you already cultivate, not replace it. Without self-love, relationships often become mirrors of insecurity. You start to tolerate behaviors that contradict your worth because you don't believe you deserve better. You start to chase validation instead of receiving love freely. You start to lose yourself trying to be enough for someone else because you never believed you were enough on your own. Self-love interrupts this cycle. It anchors you in truth so that you can discern the difference between genuine love and manipulation, between true connection and temporary distraction. The beauty of self-love is that it creates overflow. When you are filled with love for yourself, you have more love to give others. You don't love from a place of lack, you love from abundance. You don't serve from exhaustion, you serve from fullness. You don't attach from fear, you connect from freedom. Real love flows naturally when it is rooted in self-love because it is not tainted by desperation. You're not loving to prove something. You're loving because love has already been proven within you. Self-love is not a destination you arrive at once and for all. It is a daily practice. Every day you choose to honor yourself, to forgive yourself, to speak kindly to yourself, to care for yourself, to protect your peace, to pursue your purpose. Each of these choices compounds over time, creating a strong foundation that no relationship can shake. That foundation ensures that when love does come, it will rise to meet the standard you've already set, because you've taught the world by the way you live that you are not to be devalued, diminished, or disregarded. You've shown that real love must match the standard of the love you've already given yourself.